I have never believed in ghost stories. Rumors, chilling legends about cursed towns, all of them are just products of collective imagination, a way for people to scare themselves. But then I set foot in Cold Hollow, and from that moment on, I never doubted again. Cold Hollow is a forgotten name, buried deep in the vast forests of Vermont, a place where maps barely acknowledge its existence, where roads narrow as you go, fading into the gray, lifeless trees. I arrived on a late November afternoon, when the last rays of sunlight stretched long shadows across the cold dirt road. There was no sound, no sign of life, only abandoned houses, roofs caving in, dark windows like hollow eye sockets staring at the stranger who had just arrived. I wasn't here to hunt ghosts. I was just a journalist investigating mysterious stories. I wanted to know what had nearly erased this town from history. According to the documents I found before coming here, Cold Hollow was once a bustling town in the 1940s, until a series of strange disappearances began. Starting in November 1958, on the 28th of the month, a child would vanish. No signs of struggle, no screams for help, no witnesses. They disappeared from their bedrooms, their backyards, even in broad daylight. By the time the fourth disappearance happened in 1962, nearly half of the town's population had fled. The police investigated for years, but all the case files led to the same hopeless conclusion. No leads, no traces. The only common detail, on the morning after each disappearance, the front door of the child's home would be found wide open. I knew this before coming, but standing there, in the heart of Cold Hollow, I realized no report could truly capture the overwhelming sense of not belonging that this place radiated. The only person left in town was an old woman named Agnes Whitmore, living in a small house not far from the cemetery. When I knocked, she opened the door immediately, as if she had been expecting me. Her eyes were sunken, dark circles heavy under them, as if she hadn't had a restful sleep in years. I asked her about the missing children. She didn't answer right away, only stared at me for a long time. The room behind her was pitch black, filled with the scent of rotting wood and damp air. When she finally spoke, her voice was brittle, dry like dead leaves. "Don't stay after dark." I didn't believe her warning. I had been to too many so-called haunted places to know that most were just baseless legends. But Cold Hollow was different. I couldn't explain why. I only knew that as the sun set, the darkness here felt heavier than anywhere else I had ever been. I left the old woman's house and decided to search for clues in the old library, a derelict building near the town square. I figured if something had been forgotten, it would be hidden there. Inside, the scene was unsettling. The books were still on the shelves, but dust covered everything, as if no one had touched them in decades. I sifted through old documents and found a journal wedged between faded police reports. The name on the cover was Eleanor Blackwood, a girl who had gone missing in 1958. The last entry in her journal sent chills down my spine. Tonight, I heard knocking at the door. I turned the next page. It had been torn out. Night fell faster than I expected. I had planned to leave, but when I returned to my car, I realized I had made a terrible mistake. My gas tank was empty. I didn't remember driving far enough for that, nor did I understand why the gauge was suddenly near zero. But I had no choice. I decided to sleep in my car, wait for morning, and then walk to the main road for help. When the clock struck midnight, I heard it, knocking, slow, gentle, but deliberate. I held my breath, peering through the fogged-up glass. No one was there, but I knew something was. I remembered what I had read in the journal. The children had heard knocking before they vanished. If I opened the door, I would never come back. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, shut my eyes, and tried to ignore it. But then something far worse happened. The knocking was no longer coming from outside. It was inside the car. I woke up when the first rays of sunlight pierced through the windshield. My neck ached from sleeping hunched over the steering wheel, my breath still shaky. Everything looked the same, except for one thing. My car door was wide open. On the passenger seat lay an old photograph. My hands trembled as I picked it up. It was a picture of the missing children from the 1950s, standing in front of a house. I was about to set it down when I noticed a detail that made my heart stop. In the corner of the photo was me, standing there, staring straight into the camera, as if I had always belonged to this place. I left Cold Hollow, But Cold Hollow never left me. Every night, when the clock strikes midnight, I still hear the knocking. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But then I tried leaving the city, moving from place to place, staying in different hotels, even renting an apartment on the highest floor of a building. Nothing changed. The knocking followed me. And then I understood the horrifying truth. I hadn't just left Cold Hollow. I had brought it with me. The town was never just a place. It was an idea. A darkness that clings to those who dare step inside. It doesn't need to keep you there, because from the moment you enter, you already belong to it. Cold Hollow didn't just take the children. It takes anyone who sees it, walks into it, hears the knocking, and one day, it will knock on your door too. I once thought, nothing in this world could surprise me. But that was before I came to Hollowbrook, a small town forgotten among the mountains of Montana, a place that not even maps mention anymore. Today, no one lives there, but 50 years ago, it was a peaceful community, until one autumn night in 1971, when the entire town vanished. No trace, no witnesses, only emptiness remained. Half-eaten meals on dinner tables, cars with keys still in the ignition. But no one was there. I learned about Hollowbrook from an old newspaper, a story the authorities had tried to bury, a faded note still legible enough to read. It's still there, waiting, listening. Those who hear its call never return. I couldn't ignore those words. I decided to go. The road to Hollowbrook was long and winding. Thick fog clung to everything. The deeper I went, the more it felt like the outside world was fading away. No phone signal, no road signs, only me, and a feeling in the air that something was terribly wrong. Then I arrived. The town appeared like a ghost trapped in time. Everything was intact, too intact. A child's bicycle lay abandoned in the middle of the street. A fine layer of dust settled over it. The windows of the houses, still shut tight, yet I felt it, like someone standing behind them, watching, following my every step. Outside the old church I saw it, a well, ancient, silent, covered in moss, its mouth gaping open like a black hole swallowing the light. And then I heard it, a sound, soft, so soft, a hum, rising from the depths of the well. My throat went dry, my body froze. There was no wind, no one was here. But something was whispering from the bottom of that well. I stepped back, my heart pounded wildly. Then I saw it, a photograph. The photograph lay on the ground. I bent down and picked it up. In the picture were all the residents of Hollowbrook, standing in a circle, their faces empty. But in the center, in the middle of them, was a shadow, a figure with no eyes, no mouth, just a hollow void, black and endless. And it was staring right at me. I gasped. Dropped the photo, a cold wind rushed past. The picture lifted, drifting away into the darkness of the old well. I didn't wait. I ran. I ran out of the town, through the empty streets, jumped into my car, turned the key. But the moment I looked into the rearview mirror, I froze. On the street, they stood there. Figures, no eyes, no faces, watching me. I slammed on the gas, left Hollowbrook behind. My breath slowed. I had escaped, but then I looked down at the road ahead. Footprints. Not mine, footprints. Not leading away from the town, but going in. Hollowbrook no longer appears on maps. No one speaks of it anymore. But if you search carefully, very carefully, you might find a narrow path leading into the woods. No signs, no cell service. And if you step onto that path, remember one thing. If you see footprints, but they are not yours, it's already too late to turn back.